The rain was coming down in sheets as I drove home from work, the kind of rain that blurs the world into an indistinct watercolor. I was looking forward to getting back, kicking off my shoes and spending the evening with Emily. We'd been married for 12 years, and though the spark wasn't always a roaring flame, it was a steady ember that I cherished. I'm John, 47 years old, and I work as a software engineer. It's a good job, pays the bills, and allows Emily to pursue her passion for painting. Emily, 43, is well, she's everything to me. Or at least she was. As I pulled into the driveway of our cozy suburban home in Portland, something felt off. The lights were out, which wasn't unusual, but Emily's car wasn't there. She usually texted me if she was going to be late, especially on a night like this. I shrugged it off, assuming she was at an art class or maybe had gone out with a friend. I unlocked the door, the familiar click echoing in the silence. Emily. I called out, my voice swallowed by the emptiness. No response. I flipped on the lights, and that's when I saw it. A small, folded piece of paper on the kitchen counter. My heart skipped a beat. Emily rarely left notes. We usually communicated through texts or calls. I picked it up, my hands trembling slightly. John, it read in Emily's familiar handwriting. We need to talk. I'll be back later. Need to talk. Those 4 words hung in the air like a death sentence. A cold dread washed over me. What could it be? Financial problems, a family emergency, or something far worse? The next few hours were the longest of my life. I paced the living room, replaying every conversation, every interaction with Emily over the past few weeks, searching for clues, for any indication that something was wrong. I couldn't find anything. We'd been normal, maybe a little distant, but nothing alarming. Finally, around 11 p.m., I heard the familiar sound of Emily's car pulling into the driveway. I rushed to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. She walked in, her face pale and drawn. She avoided my gaze, fiddling with her purse. Emily, what's going on? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. John, I don't know how to say this. The dread intensified, a knot tightening in my stomach. Just say it, Emily, whatever it is. She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. I've been seeing someone else. Words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, my mind reeling. What, seeing someone else? What are you talking about? I've been having an affair, John. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. My ears were ringing, and I felt like I was going to be sick. An affair with who? How long? It's been going on for about 6 months, she said, her voice barely audible. It's with David, my best friend, my confidant. The guy I'd known since college. The guy who'd stood by me through thick and thin. He was a 49-year-old real estate agent and a guy who always had my back. David, I repeated, my voice cracking. You're having an affair with David, my best friend, she nodded, tears finally welling up in her eyes. I know it's awful, John, I know. I'm so sorry. Sorry wasn't going to cut it. My wife, the woman I loved, had been sleeping with my best friend for 6 months. 6 months of lies, deception, and betrayal. The pain was unbearable, a gaping wound in my soul. How could you do this, Emily? I asked, my voice filled with anguish. How could you do this to me, to us? I don't know, she sobbed. I felt like something was missing. I felt neglected. I'd worked my ass off to provide for her, to support her dreams. I'd showered her with love and affection. How could she say I'd neglected her? Neglected? Is that what you think, after everything I've done for you? I was yelling now, my voice raw with anger and hurt. I know, John, I know. I'm not saying it's your fault. I made a mistake. A mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a deliberate, calculated act of betrayal. A mistake. This is more than a mistake, Emily. This is the end of us. She didn't argue. She just stood there crying as the reality of what she'd done finally sunk in. I spent the night in the guest room, unable to bear the thought of sharing a bed with her. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I'd missed, for red flags I'd ignored. I felt like an idiot, a fool who'd been blind to the truth. The next morning, I confronted David. I called him, my voice trembling with rage. David, we need to talk. Now. He hesitated for a moment, then agreed to meet me at a local park. When I saw him, I wanted to punch him, to scream at him, to make him feel the pain I was feeling. But I restrained myself. I wanted to hear him explain, to see the shame in his eyes. "John, I don't know what to say," he stammered, avoiding my gaze. "Just tell me why, David," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Why would you do this to me, to our friendship?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, John, it just happened. Emily and we connected. I know it's wrong, I know I've hurt you, and I'm so sorry." Sorry? He was sorry, that was it. "You're sorry. You slept with my wife, betrayed my trust, and all you can say is you're sorry. I know it's not enough, John, but I care about Emily. I think I'm in love with her." He was in love with my wife. The audacity of it was astounding. "Get out of my sight, David," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I never want to see you again." He didn't argue. He just turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, alone with my pain and betrayal. The following weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and emotional turmoil. Emily and I separated, and the divorce proceedings began. The house, the life we'd built together, was being torn apart. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, a cruel and twisted version of the life I thought I had. Emily moved out, taking with her the few belongings she wanted. The house felt empty, hollow, like a tomb. I wandered through the rooms, haunted by memories of happier times, of laughter and love that now seemed like a distant dream. As the divorce neared completion, a strange calm settled over me. The initial shock and anger had subsided, replaced by a quiet acceptance. I realized that I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't undo the betrayal, but I could control how I reacted to it. I could choose to be consumed by bitterness and resentment, or I could choose to move on, to rebuild my life. I decided to move on. I started seeing a therapist who helped me process my emotions and develop healthy coping mechanisms. I reconnected with old friends, pursued new hobbies, and focused on my career. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain was overwhelming, when I felt like I would never be happy again. But I persevered. I kept moving forward, one step at a time. One evening, about a year after the divorce, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, then answered it. "Hello," I said. "John, it's Emily." Her voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. I stiffened, my heart rate increasing. "What do you want, Emily?" I just wanted to talk to you," she said. "I wanted to apologize for everything. It's a little late for that, don't you think?" I said, my voice cold. I know. But I needed you to know that I regret what I did. I made a terrible mistake, and I've hurt you more than I can ever express, you think." I said, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "I know," she said. "And I wanted you to know that things didn't work out with David." My eyebrows raised in surprise. "What do you mean he left me, John?" "A few months after we got together, he left me for someone else. Said he wasn't ready for a serious relationship." A wave of satisfaction washed over me. Karma. It had finally caught up with them. "I see," I said, trying to hide the smugness in my voice. "I know you probably don't care, but I wanted you to know," she said. "I wanted you to know that I'm alone and I'm miserable and it's all my fault." I paused for a moment, considering my response. Part of me wanted to gloat, to revel in her misery, but another part of me felt a twinge of pity. After all, she was once the woman I loved. "I'm sorry to hear that, Emily," I said, my voice softening slightly. "But I can't help you. You made your choices and you have to live with the consequences." "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I hope someday you can forgive me." "Maybe someday," I said. "But not today." I hung up the phone, a sense of closure washing over me. Emily's confession, her misery, didn't erase the pain she'd caused me. But it did provide a sense of justice, a confirmation that her actions had consequences. I continued to rebuild my life, focusing on my own happiness and well-being. I started dating again, cautiously at first, but eventually finding someone who appreciated me for who I was, someone who valued honesty and loyalty. Her name is Sarah, and she's a 36-year-old architect. We're taking things slow, but I'm optimistic about the future. The betrayal by Emily and David left deep scars, but it also taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and forgiveness. I learned that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply moving on, refusing to let the actions of others define your happiness. And I learned that even after the darkest of storms, the sun will eventually shine again. I never spoke to Emily again. I heard through mutual friends that she was still struggling, still alone, but I couldn't bring myself to care. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. As for David, he became a pariah in our social circle, ostracized by everyone who knew what he'd done. His real estate business suffered, and he eventually moved away, disappearing from our lives. In the end, I emerged from the ashes of betrayal stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I learned that I was capable of surviving even the most devastating heartbreak, and that I deserved to be happy, even after everything that had happened. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes good people get hurt. But it's how we respond to that hurt that defines us. We can choose to be victims or we can choose to be survivors. I chose to be a survivor, and I'm finally truly happy that's my story. A story of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately resilience. A story of how I survived the ultimate betrayal and found happiness again. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Remember, if you're going through something similar, you're not alone. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Keep moving forward, keep believing in yourself, and you will find your way back to happiness. Don't let anyone steal your joy. Your life is worth fighting for.